Hi everyone. Today we have with us Jamie. Jamie, thank you so much for being here and absolutely love your work, the kind of work that you do. In fact, that is where I'm going to start with. And you do podcast, right?
I do. I have my Jamie's Corner
Yeah,
podcast, so
you
it's
do.
amazing to be a guest on yours.
Yeah, you also do street activism. You also do disruptive activism.
Yes.
You do so much, Jamie. I just want to know, how do you get this energy? That's what I want. That's where I want to start.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate everything that you're doing as well. And I think that when we truly look at what is happening to the animals, it never feels like enough, right?
Mm, mm,
When I think about the billions of animals that are currently in these horrific conditions that are being sent to their deaths, I just feel like we should try and take any approach possible, and
mm.
whether it's through media and podcasting or on the ground street activism, grassroots style, um, we should do our best, and that's all I'm trying to do.
Nice, nice, nice. Yeah, and like I see your page, and I don't think that I've ever seen anyone do this much variety of activism. So that's really admirable, and keep up the good work. And I'll tell you this very honestly, that you inspire a lot of people, including me. So thank you so much for what you do.
Thank you. I appreciate that, and I'm inspired by all of you, and I truly feel that the vegan community has motivated me and made me feel maybe that I'm not like the crazy person that the world would like us
Yeah,
the
yeah.
world kind of makes us seem like, so
Yeah,
you guys,
yeah.
really, I feel so connected with you, and thank you for seeing the world the way that I do, and truly not just speaking about peace, but every single day in your actions advocating for it by leaving animals and their secretions off your plates.
Yeah, yeah. And I'm pretty sure the world definitely thinks of you as crazy, the rest of the world, but we are totally admired by your work.
Thank you. Yeah, and I think I do try in my street style activism to just break things down logically for people.
Hmm,
So by telling them, just the facts and the science, and I never try to fight somebody or be mean or angry with them. And
hmm.
so hopefully they're presented with the vegan ethical stance in a way that makes sense, in a way that's logical, and maybe that after our conversation they'll go home and they'll think about it and they'll feel positive about it and look further into these issues for themselves.
Yes, yes. And since you talked about logic, so I would like to first show you this clip and then talk about your experience. But just give me
Okay.
a moment. I'll share my screen. So can you see my screen?
Yes, I can. Oh.
Okay, so so since you talked about logic, so let's start here. And of course, this is the most logical person, Piers Morgan. And at this point, we all know that no matter what a vegan says, his mind is not going to change. And yet, you were there. So, would like to talk about your experience. But before that, let me just play this.
Vegan food apart from die-hard vegan. And I never meet a healthy looking vegan. I never meet one who doesn't yap on and on and on about being a vegan.
I feel for the animals that are forced into gas chambers who have their lives taken from them. I'd say maybe get a new chef, add some seasoning on there. There's amazing plant-based options and alternatives that can give you that same taste, satisfaction,
No,
pleasure.
that's
I
but
mean,
that's the thing. You
what's
see,
happening?
it doesn't taste as good, Tommy, does it?
I'll
No, and
I'll pause there. First and foremost, before you share your experience, he said that he has never met a healthy looking vegan or whatever that means.
I know.
But why didn't you say, "Hey, look at me"? I don't know
I
what's the definition of uh, looking at a healthy vegan, but I'm pretty sure that you look very healthy.
I think by not saying anything was saying something in itself. So like he just said that, and I think people can look at the two of us and make their own analysis. you know. It's
Yeah.
ridiculous. It's such a ridiculous statement that I wasn't gonna get. I just wanted to get the animal message in there as much as I could, so you can hear me throwing in words like, animals forced into gas chambers, having their lives taken. Like, I was just really trying to get that in there.
Hmm.
So he was kept bringing up health, and he kept bringing up, like all the other things that don't actually have anything to do with veganism, because veganism is not a diet, right? It's
Yeah.
an
Yeah.
ethical stance against animal abuse and
Hmm.
animal exploitation. So I was trying to just gear it towards that as much as I could, and he just was throwing out a million things, like all the classics: the lions and tigers eat animals, so should
Yeah.
we. Taste. They did admit to being against factory farming, which I thought was interesting,
Hmm.
because I'm like, well, everybody claims to be against factory farming, but yet they still eat factory farmed animals.
Hmm.
So clearly you're not that against it.
Yeah, yeah. But I'm sure, Jamie, that you have seen all the other clips of Piers Morgan's with all the other animal rights activists, right? And you know that the person is not going to change. But of course, at the same time, that's a huge platform to be on, right? So, what was your strategy going in there? Like, what did you think to accomplish when you decided that, okay, now I will be going there?
So I was actually surprised that I was invited on in the first place. I woke up one morning, checked my email, and saw that there was a message from his team. And I thought it was fake actually at first. So I went on LinkedIn and I was like looking up the producers, and it just so happened that that it was a real thing. And they gave me a different topic to debate beforehand. So I had prepped thinking that we were going to be debating another issue in animal rights related things, and then last minute they changed it up on me, and
Hmm.
which is fine. Like, I'm
Hmm.
prepared to discuss any of these issues really, but my strategy was just like, I think we as activists have to put our own discomfort aside, and even though it's scary and uncomfortable, we just have to keep the animals in mind and
Hmm.
do whatever we can for them. So yeah, I was nervous, and yeah, I was like very uncomfortable, because you're really being thrown into the ring, like these are two
Hmm.
people that I know are against us, I know
Hmm.
are going to try to make me look bad,
Hmm.
and that are going to try to do anything just for the ratings of their show. So my strategy was really like, no matter what, I am going to maintain a level of calmness, and I'm going to look like the logical person in
Hmm.
this conversation, because optics play a huge
Hmm.
part.
Hmm.
People don't always remember what you say to them, but they remember how you made them feel.
Hmm.
And so I want people to, watch this interview and be like, oh, the vegan actually, like, I could relate to her. What she said made sense, and maybe she's not all that crazy after all. And if he wants to make comments about my appearance and whatnot, that
Hmm.
just makes him look not so good.
Hmm. That's really smart, and I'm 100% sure that at this stage, he and his team invites vegan, and what they are trying to do is look for opportunities to ridicule the person and thereby ridicule the
Yeah.
movement, right? And that's really smart of you to have that broad vision that, okay, this is why I'm going here. I know that I can't change this one person, but at the same time, this platform, and like you rightly said, the optics of you know putting out the message of vegans from a logical standpoint to the rest of the world because of such a huge platform, right? And from there, I would like to ask you, because you do so many different types of activism, because at the same time you also talk to people on street with the aim of impacting them to think about
Yes.
veganism in a positive light, right? Which is very different from how you would have approached the Piers Morgan show, right? So these are different types of activism. And of course, in addition to this, you do disruptive activism, podcasts, and so much more, right? How do you prioritize your activism?
I think that we just have to take different approaches for different issues. And I try to be strategic as an activist, where if I'm dealing with a company,
Hmm.
like I crashed the Coach runway show in New York City, and that made media headlines. And
Hmm.
that's kind of, it's a last resort. It's not like we just hop on the runway out of nowhere. It's after sometimes years of telling them, hey guys, Coach, we have all this horrible investigation footage from the leather industry. this is what happens, this is the animal cruelty, this is what happens to the animals, this is the environmental impact, here is an alternative. And when they fail to respond and when they fail to change, that's when we take things up a notch and we do more of the disruptive activism. But when I'm speaking to individuals on the street, I find that relating to them and I find that like having conversations is better, in my opinion, than, throwing blood on them maybe. But again, I'm not here to judge anybody else's style of activism. If they find that it's working, then go for it. Like, I think that we should just continuously analyze, did I create the impact that I wanted? Is the outcome of my action a positive one for the animals? And if it's not, then we need to change our approach.
And how do you analyze that? That's a huge question, which I believe the whole movement has been struggling with. More than struggling, there have been infights as well. And that's why you rightly said that, okay, someone can do X, someone else can do Y. And if you think that it's working, but the question is, how do we analyze what's working and what's not working? Like, or at least,
So
how do you do it as an individual?
that's a really great question. And I think it could depends on the situation. So let's say it's an individual animal rescue. If
Hmm.
that individual animal is taken out of a situation where they're suffering
Hmm.
and that animal is now living on a sanctuary, that to me is a positive outcome. And that is, what we would want. If it's a disruption like the Coach Runway fashion show, I tend to look at the media that it received and how was it received in the media? Was it positive? Did it make me look crazy? And actually, the Coach Runway fashion show, it was a very, very positive action because it got Vogue Business talking about how destructive leather is. It I think represented the vegan movement in a positive light where I looked fashionable. People were commenting on like we liked her walk, which was funny. So they didn't look at me as some crazy vegan going on the runway throwing blood. People were entertained by it. So it was very positive.
Hmm.
And the message got across. And that's what I think we need to look at.
Hmm.
But when I post my videos with my like street style activism, I'll try to look at certain data analytics, like the comments on the videos. So, like, am I reaching the non vegans that I want to
Hmm.
reach, or is it the echo chamber of the vegan community?
Hmm.
Sometimes it's okay if it's just reaching in the vegan community because it can inspire other people to do actions and to get active for the animals. But my goal really is to reach more mainstream and wider spread audiences with
Hmm.
the vegan message, right?
Hmm.
So if I sometimes notice that a video has like, you know, thousands of comments and the comments are people putting pictures of and memes of meat
Hmm.
and bacon and saying, I'm going to eat double the steak, I
Hmm.
actually don't see that as so negative. I
Hmm.
see that as reaching the people I want to reach. These are the
Hmm.
people that need to be hit with the vegan message. And
Hmm.
sometimes people's first reactions are defense and they're defensive reactions,
Hmm.
which
Yeah.
means that they are actually thinking about this, processing this, and trying to take the guilt off of them by
Hmm.
any way that they can, and by
Hmm.
joking about it, and by targeting the messenger. That's just their way of coping
Hmm.
with the question, am I the reason why this animal is suffering?
Hmm. Interesting.
So yeah,
Yeah.
it's a loaded answer to a loaded question, but I hope
Hmm.
that makes a little bit of sense how we can analyze our actions to see how we're creating impact.
Yep. Yep. And you also talked about the social media reach, which is very important. And even I share this same feeling that you have, that once we reach to non-vegans, or let's even call the anti-vegan segment, and there's a lot of troll, in my opinion, that is a positive sign, as long as the message in the video was not something out of line or a misquoted fact or something of that sort. Otherwise, if people are trolling with these memes like the Mr. Bean eating um, animal flesh, like, which is one of the most common nonsensical meme that people give in the comment section. So yeah, if those things are coming, then I believe that, okay, we are getting to people, right? And like you rightly said, that's a coping mechanism and not such a bad thing.
Right. I love that you said that it really is important that the video content is
Hmm.
showing what we want it to. I think some of the most impactful videos our slaughter footage. Like,
Hmm.
there is nothing, that is just the fact of what happens. And sure, there's people that don't want to watch it, that say they can't watch it. But I truly believe, and what changed me was allowing myself to see the truth and putting it in
Hmm.
front of people. Like, I don't
Hmm.
understand, we don't have to keep watching it over and over again, but it's like,
Hmm.
if people can't watch this stuff, then they shouldn't be eating it. And if somebody
Yeah.
wants to comment bacon memes on that type of footage, like, it it just shows that they're trying to cope with this
Yeah.
horrific suffering that they're participating in.
Yeah. Exactly. And since you talked about your latest campaign with Coach, and you said that it was received positively in the fashion world as well by people who are not necessarily animal rights people. So that's, of course, a great thing. That being said, in the fashion space, I believe people are generally more empathetic to the animal message, right?
Yeah,
Because it's easier for people to give up and say, okay, fine, I it's okay not to wear leather, and of course, it's coming from animal cruelty. So people are generally more supportive, in my opinion, right? But
totally.
when you would do something of similar nature with the milk or animal flesh part, then that time inevitably, like, it's almost certain that at that time you will get negative comments and negative reactions as well, right? So on that note, first I'll share my screen to show you one of your activism videos,
Okay.
and then we'll take your opinion on that. First and foremost, in my opinion, this is perhaps one of your strongest activism outreach, and
Thank you.
this looks really powerful, really impactful. And before I ask you this question, first let me say that you did this with your friend Justina, and there's another person. Unfortunately, I don't know her name, and that's my bad. Can you please tell her name? I want to give her a shout out as well.
I don't know if she wants the shout out actually.
Okay.
She, after doing the action, I think she just
Okay.
she didn't love that we were arrested, and so
Okay. 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 In that case,
yeah.
we will not.
So just don't give her the yeah.
Okay, but still admire the courage put by all three of you. So yeah,
Thank you.
this is one of those activism where probably a lot of non-animal rights person would have criticized you, right? And of course there were a lot of emotions involved in this, because like you said, after the event you were also arrested by the cops. So essentially, can you walk us through your mind frame
Hmm.
first, this before the event, during the event, and after the event, how things turned out?
Sure. So this was a art installation that was first done in the UK by Speciesism WTF, and
Hmm.
this woman Stephanie Lane, who is an animal rights activist, filmmaker, artist, came up with this concept of placing humans in the positions of the animals to draw people's empathy out, to show them that if these same things were done to humans, we would not be okay with it.
Hmm.
And so the first round of art installations she did was in London, and she had women basically put on very nude clothing, and it was as if these women were being milked. They were mothers that had their babies taken away, and we held signs that said milk is not humane.
Hmm.
And there was like a parentheses outside of the E
E.
there.
Hmm.
And so when I saw these art installations that were happening in London, then I saw them pop up in other parts of the world. I was like, we have to bring this to New York City. I think that using art as a means to get the animal rights message across is so powerful and so effective. So Stephanie and I, months leading up to this action, hopped on many calls, and she kind of walked us through. We talked through where we wanted to do the action. It was really cold out in New York, so I was like, it would kind of be good if we can do this inside somewhere. That's where we got in trouble. We talked through what materials were needed. She sent us a box of the tubes, and we had these milk cartons, and we gathered a small team together. And so the day of, I had everybody meet at my apartment, and we had to put on makeup. So we did bruises all over our bodies and like dark under eye circles, and just to show the plight of the animals, of like how exhausted these dairy cows are after years of being inseminated and having their babies taken, and we've had to put fake blood on us. And so everybody met at my place, and it took us about an hour just to get ready into our outfits. And there's so many thoughts that are going through my head. I mean, first and foremost, I think I was just, I think the outfits in general are kind of provocative, but not in a sexual way, more in just a like, whoa, this is like what is happening here kind of way. And which is good because we want to draw the attention onto this issue. But that was one thing that was going through my head, was like, oh, like it's not the most comfortable thing to do, but we'll do whatever it takes. And then of course the cold weather, and thinking through the logistics, we had to take two Ubers to get to Grand Central. And I was coordinating everything from the photographer to videographer to our team that was there and where we wanted to position everybody. So we get in these cabs, and as soon as we arrive at Grand Central, we're literally in bathrobes with these costumes underneath. And I just book it straight into Grand Central. I said, we have no time to stop, because as soon as we start walking in there, eyes are going to be on us. So we set up right where we wanted to, in front of the clock. The photographer was positioned up on the stairs, and we dropped our robes, threw them to the side, and we stood there for about 5 minutes maybe before the cops came over. And there were a circle of people. I mean, people started coming over. They were like, what is going on? People were taking pictures. It was really an amazing, I mean, if you look at some of the photos from the aftermath of this, we definitely captured what we wanted
Absolutely.
to. And I think people need to keep in mind that when we do these type of actions, the photos and videos sometimes are more important than the actual action itself, because it amplifies the message. It can reach millions of people online, and it can also not only reach people online, but allow it to last forever. So we got the photos that we needed, we got the videos that we needed, and the cops came over and they were like, hey, you guys have to, you can't have somebody lying here on the ground. So she stood up, the woman that was like the cow, she had like a little cow print on her arm. She stood up. Then they told my friend that had the bullhorn, who was doing a speak out, she was like the farmer, like farming us women. And she put the bullhorn down. We listened, no problem. And then they said to us, you guys have to leave. So we were like, okay, no problem. So we start unchaining ourselves, because we were chained together, and we start walking, and I turn around and I'm like, well, they're talking to our friend who was on the floor and our friend who had the bullhorn, and I'm like, are they giving them tickets? Like, what's going on? We also needed our bathrobes, because our friend that was like kind of standing just watching and holding our stuff had our robes. So that hesitation in turning around and not like just walking straight out and exiting is what got us arrested.
Okay. And this was all in a span of just 5 minutes.
I would say under 10 minutes.
Wow. Wow. And what was, I'm sure that there was too much to process, but if you can reflect, and what was in your mind at that time when cops came? Were you, I'm sure that it was not very easy situation for you and for everyone involved, right?
Well, my thing is like, we're not here to argue with them. Like, we just want to get our photos, and we want to just get the message out there. And when they ask us to leave, we'll leave. Like, I don't think me getting arrested for that action is like impactful for the animals. You know what I mean? Like, if I have charges now on my record, and which I don't, we ended up we had to go to court, and we had a 3-month ACD, which means you just have to behave for 3 months. But it's like, for me, that is not the goal here to get arrested. The goal is to get this artistic message out there. And which we did. And I think that's actually what led to me being on Piers Morgan, because the thing went viral, especially in the UK. So what's going through my head is, especially when I was handcuffed, I was like, okay, I'm going to remain calm. We'll get through this. Was not expecting this to happen. But what was going through my head is especially like being behind the bars, I was like, wow, this is what the animals feel every single day of their lives. They never get a break. And I'm only in here for a few hours, and I
Hmm.
get to leave and go home to my, warm, safe apartment and bed. And the
Hmm.
animals never get to experience that. They have no bodily autonomy whatsoever. So for me
Hmm.
to be able to use my body to speak up for them, I think it was a eye opening experience.
Hmm. And thank you so much for doing that. And it was, like you said, it went viral. It got people's attention, and that is what we were trying to get at and make the
Yeah.
connection, right? That what are you participating in? I mean, you think something like drinking milk is an act of innocence and almost a neutral kind of an act where no one is harmed, but this is the reality. Please learn from this, right? Nice.
Exactly. Exactly. That was the goal. And then, you see more of these actions popping up all over the world. And Stephanie Lane from Species WTF,
Hmm.
I actually got to meet her this past summer, and we did another installation called Fishing is Not
Yeah,
Humane.
I've
And
seen that.
we had, dozens of bodies underneath a net to just artistically depict what these sentient animals are going through when they're
Hmm.
caught in these large fishing nets, and how if this were done to humans it wouldn't be so humane, right?
Hmm. Hmm. Exactly. Yeah, and really inspiring. And like you rightly said, this also gives courage to a lot of other folks, people like me, that, okay, I mean, you are setting the benchmark, and this is, we have to match that because like whatever we do will never be enough for animals, or whatever we are doing right now is not enough for the animals. So we have to push our limits, right? So I don't know.
Yes.
I don't know if you have looked at it from this perspective. If not, I would like to take this opportunity to say this to you, that of course this creates buzz with the non-vegans, but even with the vegans, I believe it helps us to become slightly more comfortable with our discomforts and push our
Mhm.
boundaries. So thank you so much for that. And
Thank you.
next, I would like to ask you now. I try to make this slightly positive. Can you share some of your best activism moments, like where you thought, okay, now I'm so glad that I'm doing this because this happened?
Wow, that's a really hard question. There's been so many. Oh
Yeah.
wow. Well, first and foremost, I think activism in general is so broad. Like, what I love so much about it is that you can take your unique talents and abilities to apply it to animal rights or to anything that you really care about, right? So it could be wearing a t-shirt to the grocery store with a vegan message on it. Something as simple as eat beans, not beings.
Hmm.
And I have had so many people be like, love your shirt. That's so cool. Or I have my anti-dairy social club shirt. And I was
Hmm.
walking through the airport and somebody said, love your shirt. That's awesome.
Hmm.
So activism to me is really the only thing that quiets my mind when
Hmm.
it comes to what's happening to the animals. So some really positive and amazing moments that come to mind when doing activism. It's so many. It's hard to pick. I guess like I really love the ones that get super personal, where it's like I'll be having a conversation with somebody on the street, and they just, you see the wheels turning, and you see them going from like kind of defense mode to just complete and utter defeat, and they change. I mean, I do a lot of anonymous for the voiceless cubes, like AV cubes of truth, which for people that don't know what that is, we just stand on the streets with TV screens that show standard practices of what happens to animals, and we have conversations, and they're very educational and positive and lighthearted. And um, I've had people literally come up to me and be like, I don't know if you remember me, Jamie, but we met 6 months ago and I've been vegan ever since. Just wanted to let you know, like, my life has been changed forever. And like that to me is like,
The
that is
best
why
feeling.
we do what we do.
Yeah.
Oh, it's the best. Yeah.
That's
And so that's super motivating.
Yep, yep. That's the
Um,
best feeling. I can so relate with that when you are doing street activism and then someone randomly comes to you, hey, I
yeah.
became activism watching your video, and I'm like
Yeah.
feel so empowered, right? Okay, yeah.
So empowering. I would say you get this feeling and so many actions that I do, high risk, low risk actions, where you are just standing there and you're vulnerable, but you know that what you're doing is right and you know you're on the right side of history. So you get this like empowering feeling. Like
Hmm,
I went out on the street a few days ago where I had a sign that said I'd rather go naked than wear fur. And I
hmm,
was not real, I wasn't wearing anything. I had underwear on,
hmm.
underneath, but
Yeah.
uh, you kind of get this feeling of like people are like you can think whatever you want about me, but you know that the message
Hmm,
is right, and all we're doing is spreading kindness and trying to
hmm,
create peace on this planet, right? So
hmm.
when I think about like just so many things come to mind. If you don't mind, I'll mention a few
Please
activism
go
things that
ahead.
I've done the past couple months.
Yeah,
So I went on tour with allied scholars for animal
yeah.
protection, and we hit 17 universities around the country.
Hmm.
I
Dr.
was able to
Faraz.
make 10 of them. Dr. Faraz Harsini, go
Yeah,
check out his work. I
yeah.
think they are doing some of the most impactful work right now in the animal rights movement because
Yep.
they are setting up chapters on campuses around the country
Hmm,
where people are college students are talking about animal rights issues. So these are the future scientists, the future doctors, the future lawmakers, the future donators who are now faced to confront these very pressing issues. And we set up all sorts of demos on campus from like, we'll be like, do you love animals? Have a cookie. And then, then it leads to a further conversation of like, okay, well, if you love animals, can you eat them too? And so we
hmm,
get into the weeds of that, and we'll set up dog meat demos where we'll give out dog meat, which
hmm.
it's not actually dog meat. It's just people usually get upset
Elwood.
by that. We're like, why are you upset if you eat meat? Like, what's the difference between a dog? Yeah, Elwoods are getting dog meat.
Yeah.
What's the difference between a dog, a cow, a pig, a chicken, a turkey, a fish, right? So it's led to so many great conversations, and I have so much video content that I have to share from that. But I'm able to really learn from other activists like Dr. Faraz Harsini and sharpen up my skills. Like we should forever be learning and changing. And
Hmm,
so that's one thing that comes to mind. I also try to infiltrate a little bit. So like I'll go to conferences. Like I went to this conference called Skift, which was like
hmm,
a global travel conference where they're talking about sustainability. And I started asking people at the conference, I'm like, so what does sustainability mean to you?
hmm,
How come you haven't addressed or adopted a plant-based food system?
hmm,
If you're so concerned about sustainability.
hmm.
So
Yeah.
kind of like infiltrating in those ways,
Hmm,
and just all different sorts of things. I just went to a fundraiser for the Save movement and talked about the power and importance of vigils and
hmm,
actually being face to face with the animals and how that made me a stronger activist actually.
hmm,
And I'm going to be speaking at a few more schools, and I'm going to be doing more undercover investigations. So that's
hmm,
coming up. And also some more art campaigns. I do a lot of street art, like wheat pasting and
hmm.
spray paint stuff. So,
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And I really resonate with the point that when we do vigils, of course, the footages matter because we show it to the rest of the world, like what's really happening to animals. It's an opportunity for them to come closer to animals and their experiences. But I can't stress on this enough. I can't highlight this enough that it is such a powerful tool for the activist as well. The whole experience, because like to know certain things in theory is one thing, but the moment you connect with an animal, right, I mean, you feel vulnerable just like the animal, but at the same time, it empowers you to be more passionate to talk to
yeah.
others. So that is such a powerful experience. In fact, you'll not believe this happened with me recently. So I put out a video, and that was from a lecture which I took probably 1 year back. So a small clip from that. And generally, right, that we sometimes compare hens laying eggs with human women's period, right? And I edited that part out and I wrote a comment there because after posting it, I again deleted that video and edited. I put out the new video, and I made a note there that the reason why I have edited that part out is because in the past few months I have spent time with hens, and I think their suffering is something that deserves recognition on its own accord. It doesn't need to be compared with a human for it to get validation. And that is a feeling which is it's very hard to explain. I don't know if I'm doing justice in saying this, but it's very hard feeling like ever earlier I used to talk to people, I used to say, hey, that is, it's equivalent to a human period, and that also scientifically that's not very accurate, but yeah, we still do that so that we can get the other person to empathize. But now I feel, no, I think they're suffering in their own accord. It's so much, right? So I changed that part, and that's very personal, and that just happened because I visited many hens and poultry farm in the recent times. So yeah, that is such an important message.
Right. There's a quote. It's the question is not can they speak, but can they suffer?
Suffer, yeah. And I
Right. And
think,
I'm butchering that a little bit, but that's the point. Is like it
yeah,
doesn't matter that they don't do maybe the same things we
we
do,
do.
but can they experience pain? Can they suffer? And if we have the option to avoid that and to not be the reason why they would
Hmm,
experience that
hmm.
negative feeling, then why wouldn't we avoid it?
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, they don't need to have human traits like that of speaking or the same level of intelligence as we have. And like, who are we to decide if their traits are valuable or not, right? Uh,
Exactly.
eh, in fact, another video, I think that just took off, and a lot of trolls on my page because of that. And people are like, some stupid comments like, hey, what is the purpose of these hens? And in my head, I'm like, what is your purpose of existing? But okay, I didn't write that.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
but who the hell are we to decide someone else's purpose, right? Because even in humans, for that matter, there can be a person X who is an absolute who's doing nothing to
Right.
the society, right? Who's not contributing anything, and then there can be a genius scientist who's battling with issues of our planet, right? So if you talk about the purpose, then it should be fine if it comes to that kill one person for the sake of another. But we don't do that, right? Because everyone, irrespective of their contribution to the society, as long as it's positive or zero. If it's a negative contribution, then that's different, but as long as the contribution is neutral, I think we have no right to decide the fate of
Well,
someone else, right? And I don't know how you feel about this, but talking to some people, I think that hens are contributing more than some human
right.
beings.
I think so too. I completely agree with you. It's
Yeah.
like people will say that we're so similar to animals in a sense that lions and tigers eat meat, so should we. But then they'll say, well, we're so different from animals, they don't contribute anything to society. It's like, well, pick one. What is
Yeah.
it? It's like
Yeah.
they pick and choose different narratives to try to just justify their
Hmm.
flesh eating addiction.
Exactly.
It makes no sense. And I completely agree with you. I think chickens do I have more chicken friends than people friends. Actually, chickens are people too. Human
Yeah.
friends, I mean to say.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And that's actually a very good debating point, though we'll not get into that too much. But like, if you get into the finesse of debating, this is one point where an activist should focus on. That if in on one side people try to justify their act by bringing themselves closer to animals, that is, we are similar to lions and tigers, and on other side they try to justify their act by saying that, hey, these animals are so different from us, or they are not us, and hence we get to. And that's such a huge contradiction in on how they operate, how they are thinking, right? So that is
Right.
something that can be exploited in a debate. That being said, Jamie, you talked about one of your recent activism, and I have that as well. Let me quickly share that, and I wanted to discuss that with you. This is the one that you referred to
Yeah.
just now, right?
Hmm.
So first and foremost, I would like to say that this is really strong activism, and I'm sure that it takes a lot at an emotional level to put yourself out there. And in doing so, this is a type of activism which I am assuming would also attract a lot of hate comment or negative comment. So
Hmm.
my question to you is that how do you deal with all of that emotionally?
That's a great question. I think I just put myself aside and think about the animals. I don't think that any of this is about us. You know, sometimes I have people that will say, you're just doing this for attention to make money and this is not. I'm like, animal rights is the last thing I would choose to focus on if I were trying to make money. And yes, I want attention on these issues. Absolutely. That's the whole point.
Hmm.
Like I don't just do this for myself, you
Hmm.
know? So you'll get comments like that. But I think I'm just used to it. Like as an activist, you develop thick skin and you kind of just get used to the the hate comes with it, and I think that that's okay because as we said before, that's just people's way of coping and processing, and I actually think a reaction is better than no reaction at all. Like
Hmm.
somebody that just doesn't care, I can't really work with, but
Hmm.
somebody that shows some sort of even fight, I can actually work with that.
Hmm. But I'm sure that there would be times where you feel a bit vulnerable because being a public
Yeah,
personality, and by the way, I can relate with you completely, right? As public personality, we put ourselves out there and we get a lot of hate, and I think the best coping mechanism is this, something I tell to activists here as well in some of the in some of the training sessions, is to think from the victim's perspective, like what we tell to um, people who are non-vegans. The same is applicable for the activist as well, that think from the victim perspective, that of course you get so much of hatred, but is that discomfort even on the same universe as compared to animals, right? That's there. But still there are times when you feel vulnerable. Does that happen to you?
of course. I mean, just like any human being, before any action, I get nervous and I love the quote, speak up even if your voice shakes. Because as you're saying, it's like if you were in the victim's position, how would you want to be spoken up for?
Hmm.
These animals are people. Animals are people too. And we have people going into slaughterhouses by
Hmm.
the millions every day, by the billions every year. Like, these are people, and the things that are happening to these people, it's unfathomable. And so me standing outside with a sign naked, it's like
Hmm.
okay, it's not really that bad or hard compared to like what these animals are going through. And if I can help just slightly move the needle a little bit, slightly get inside somebody's psyche and subconsciously have them see that a subject like fur
Hmm.
is so just brutal and disgusting,
Hmm.
that to me is a victory. If somebody even just sees that,
Hmm.
and the point is, it's like so dramatic because it's like I would literally rather go outside in the freezing cold with no clothes on than put on the skins and furs of animals. So that
Hmm.
like is a message in itself.
Hmm.
And you know, you have it's I think the meat and dairy industry they use sex to sell products
Hmm.
all the time. And so I
Hmm.
don't see anything wrong with using sexy and compassionate messaging in activism. Use what you got. I mean, why not?
Hmm. Exactly.
People think that just because I'm an activist that like I can't have any fun and that like I can't have a vacation or I can't like eat good food, and I'm like, why? Like I'm a human being. Like and I think that there's this pressure that is put on public figures and put on activists. And the truth of the matter is that, honey, if I don't take care of myself, I will not
Hmm.
be able to do this in the long run. It is
Hmm.
draining, you know?
Hmm.
And so I encourage people, like, really, it is so valuable to have self-care in your life and in your routine. And
Hmm.
meditation and yoga are two things that help me a lot. I like
Hmm.
writing, I like reading, I like to spend time with friends and go to eat good vegan food. Like, and that helps fuel me.
Yeah,
Sue me.
of course. I think it's so important for us to take care of our mental health because
Yes.
sustainability is so damn important for activists. And when I say sustainability, I think the sustainability of our activism, not to burn out, right? It's something which has to be done for a long period of time, and we have to take care of our mental health. you talked about your friends and family, and that's an interesting take, because a lot of times we are most mentally drained because of our family and family members and friends. When I say we, I mean animal rights activists. When our friends and family members who we absolutely love, but when we see them that they are not aligning with our ethical values, that is veganism, the justice movement, that is veganism, it pains, and it also takes a toll on us. So would you like to share some experiences around that, and how do you cope with it?
So many experiences around that. I'm so glad you brought that up. I've reached a point now in my life where I think that boundary is set and people are very, very respectful, like at least in my inner circle of my moral and ethical stances, and they are vegan around me.
Mm,
I mean, that is, and I'm very grateful for that.
mm,
Because otherwise I wouldn't actually be around. So
mm,
like Thanksgivings, I don't go. I don't go home for that. I
mm,
just spend time with my friends that are vegan, and that's my choice because I can't control myself sometimes. And so it's like, do I want to bring that negative light of veganism to I've done it before and it's
mm,
not good, and I sometimes know where maybe I just need to not go to some things.
mm,
And there have been experiences or times in the past where like when I was in college and I was living at my dad's house, I would come downstairs and just the whole house would smell like either fish, or one time he was making lamb chops and there was like blood on the chopping board, and I had just
mm,
gone to like a vigil that morning and I saw lambs on the truck, and it was so triggering for me. And I
mm,
just ran back upstairs and I just cried. And I just cried because it's like you see the people that you love the most, the people that are so close to you,
mm,
contributing to the issue that you're trying to end every single day. And it's
mm,
like they're good people that are participating in such
mm,
evil, evil industries and evil
mm,
things. And so family can truly be the hardest, and it is super frustrating.
mm,
And my advice is to, if you're new at being vegan, try to have them watch documentaries and just try to like get them to, at least learn the information. But
mm,
if they're not willing to change, sometimes it's not worth you using your energy on them and
mm,
getting drained from that, and instead take that energy and convert, you know dozens of more people
mm.
out on the streets. Sometimes strangers are easier to reach because
Of
with
course.
family, it's like there's this level of credibility that sometimes is just not there.
Mm, mm.
So, my brothers look at me, they're like, we grew up with you. Like, you're an idiot. Why should I listen to you?
Yeah.
But I still have hope that they will change one day because
Mm,
I see this empathy for animals within them. I see this ability to care, but what they do is they just shut it off and they like close a blind eye to the animals that are on their plates, and they
mm,
almost act as if those are not living animals, or that they once were not living animals. And hopefully I'm there to remind them. I mean, they follow me on social media and
mm,
whatnot, but
mhm.
I just yeah, it can be really hard. I mean, I've had so many like really tough times with
Ha-
family and really tough conversations, but also really positive ones. And I've had family members that are now vegan.
And have you lost friends?
Yes,
Mm.
yes. I have
I,
lost friends over this. Actually, one of my best friends
mm,
from high school,
mm,
which is so ridiculous. She was like plant based, and now she's not anymore, but she lost her senior dog because the dog was old and passed away, and she ended up buying a dog from a breeder. And I
mm,
said to her, hey, like, I have so many dogs and shelters that I work with that I could have gotten you any breed, any age you wanted, yet you like
mm,
went to a breeder. Why
mm,
would you do that?
mm,
And I kind of just spoke my piece. Like, I couldn't not. I mean, ultimately, she's going to do what she's going to do. It's her life. But I
mm,
just thought it was so awful. It's like that right
mm,
there, that action means that there's a dog that gets euthanized,
mm,
and multiple dogs that get euthanized. And
mm,
then she went and bought another fucking dog.
mm,
So I was just like, I don't know. It created this like clear disconnect where I was like, clearly, we just do not have the same values. And I don't know. I was so upset by it. And I think me expressing my opinion upset her. And so we
Hmm.
just kind of stopped talking. And I don't hold any hate in my heart. I wish her the best, but that to me is like such disgusting behavior. And I'm like, even non-vegans
Hmm.
understand that buying a dog from a breeder is a big no-no.
Hmm. That's an easier message to get across within the animal rights space. Yeah.
I know. That's one example. Another example is like I met a friend for lunch. This was a couple of years ago, and we went to this Mexican place. And I said to her before the lunch, I said, "Look, they have so many vegan options. Like, I would really appreciate it if you got the vegan option. They have so many. It would make me feel really uncomfortable to sit there with you while you're eating whatever sandwich with like chicken or steak or whatever in it."
Hmm.
And what does she do? She orders like the chicken burrito. And I just said, hey, like, maybe we can eat after. Let's catch up now and I'll just drop you off. Like, so that I just don't want to be around it kind of thing. And she went off on me. I don't know what happened to you. You're crazy, blah, blah, blah. And I'm just like, dude, if there were a dog in that burrito, like,
Hmm.
you would feel the same way I'm feeling right now.
Hmm. Yeah.
I
I,
don't know
I
what the answer is. Maybe some people feel fine sitting and eating with the animal products.
hmm.
I
Hmm.
just try to avoid it where possible. There are times where sometimes I don't have the other option, but
Hmm.
if I can avoid it, I try to.
Yeah. 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 I mean, on that, given an option, if we have that like if we have that option to avoid it, of course we should avoid it, because also that gets the message across. But I so relate with your situation with your friends and family. And you said earlier that we should try to avoid activism with our family members, and this is something which I keep telling people, that not to do activism with non-neutral people in your life, your family
Mm,
members, your managers, right? People who have some sort of power, where you have some sort of power dynamics, that can be emotional power dynamics or whatever. The reason for that, it takes a lot of effort. Like if I have to, I realize this a bit later, but now this is how I feel. And by the way, I relate so much with that point, that there's that authority issue as well when you do it with your immediate family member. Like, what are you saying? I've seen you grown up and devouring
yeah.
animal flesh, and now you are giving me all this gyan. So completely relate to that. But now this is what I tell people, and this is what I personally practice as well, that even if we want our family members to change, I will not be the agent of change. I'd rather let Jamie speak to my family members. I'll not do that, right? Because then that's a neutral relationship for with between Jamie and my family. So I think that helps us a lot, because with family, the moment we start getting into that thought that I have loved this person, I love this person so much, we have grown up together, seen shit together, we I assume that we have similar value system. Why the hell can't they see the animal's perspective, right? And that is so damn frustrating. So so that's the reason why I think it's a good idea to stay away from your family members when it comes to activism.
Totally. I think that that's good advice, and I think it's worth being like, if you want to watch a documentary with me, that would be great. Like my ex boyfriend, I he wasn't vegan when we started dating, but I had kind of set that boundary of like I don't want it around me, and I
Mhm.
had hope that he would go vegan.
Did he?
I yeah, I mean I wouldn't have stayed with him for
Damn.
4 years if he didn't. But I said to him, I was like, I don't want you doing this for me, and I certainly don't want you sneaking cheese and like products behind my back. Like I want you to do this because you believe it's the right thing to do, and so I just recommend educating yourself. And so we ended up watching a few documentaries together, and that's a good way because it's not me preaching to him. It's like almost as if he's finding the information for himself in a way.
Hmm.
And yeah, and he did go vegan, and he's vegan for life.
Nice.
Like
Nice.
yeah,
Nice. That's really
yeah.
glad to know. Yeah, and I think again this, no offense to any vegan who has a partner who's not a vegan, but this I feel this is very strong, that your partner has to be vegan, because you're sharing your life with someone. And when I say has to be vegan, because otherwise it's such a huge disconnect to be around with some,
Huge.
right? But again, I say this, and I don't mean any offense to any vegans who are dating or married to non-vegans. And of course, in this situation, I come from a place of privilege that my partner and we went vegan together. Otherwise, like, some people become vegan later and they are already committed into a relationship, right? So it's
Right,
so,
right.
yeah. So just want to say it out there. uh, Jamie, one thing I want to ask you, this is with regard to uh, activism and the vegan movement in general, that how big is the impact of celebrities on masses when it comes to the animal rights movement? Share your thoughts around that. And also, recently, that Russell Brand, a very influential figure,
Ugh.
has announced that he's not a vegan anymore. And one of those celebrities who was not plant based, he was an ethical vegan in the sense that he did talk about it openly and all of that, right? So what are your thoughts? One, the impact of celebrities on the movement, and secondly, such incidents.
The impact of celebrities on the movement is major. A celebrity can say one sentence and reach millions of people, and they have so many fans and people that look up to them and respect them. So when they say something stupid and they say something that is not true, or
Hmm.
they stop being vegan,
Hmm.
it sets us back, I believe, years.
You think so?
Especially, you look at what happened with Russell Brand.
Hmm.
He is somebody that was ethically connected and then stopped being vegan and ethically connected, which is confusing. I can't imagine how that could happen.
Hmm.
And so what it does is it almost confuses the public, and it makes veganism look like it's this thing that is like wishy-washy, or this thing that is like, oh, you could be vegan one day and then not vegan the next day. And it's like, no, it's an ethical stance against not wanting to hurt animals, and it's all of the time. You don't get time off from that, from your morals and values. And you compare
Hmm.
it to any other social justice movement, it's like, well, no, I'm not like homophobic some of the time. Like,
Hmm.
I don't just like women some of the time. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? It's like,
Hmm.
no, all the time I am for equality. Okay. And that goes with animals too. And so, yeah, I think that celebrities, like, we as activists should be using celebrities to help push plant-based eating. And Kim Kardashian did the ad with the Beyond Meat burger, and that I mean reached so many people. You have somebody like Joaquin Phoenix that did a speech at the Oscars where he's talking about the
Hmm.
dairy industry and how humans think they're so superior to animals that we take their lives away from them for coffee creamer.
Hmm.
And that sent waves throughout the world. And
Hmm.
so, yeah, I think that it's major. And you had who was it that went on the Joe Rogan show? It was Elon Musk went on
Hmm.
Joe Rogan's show and said that a plant-based diet has no
Impact
environmental
on. Hmm.
impact.
Hmm.
Oh my god.
Hmm.
That is like somebody that is supposed to be smart that gets on there and says that, literally sets us back years.
Hmm.
Because now we have to fight this misinformation that's out there. And I think that's what actually is our biggest problem right now in the vegan movement, is these misinformation campaigns. The
Hmm.
meat industry has put, and dairy industry has put out so much information from, they say processed plant-based meats are not good for you.
Hmm.
Meanwhile, it's still better than the meat alternative, but
Hmm.
nobody talks about that. They'll say that soy gives you boobs from soy milk,
Hmm.
which is not true.
Hmm.
If soy gave you boobs, people would be guzzling that shit. Um, so they say all these things that now we are trying to like fight back on that before we can then like put our attack out.
Hmm.
You know what I'm saying? So it's like we're fighting this misinformation, and a lot of the misinformation is because of influencers that are hired by the meat, dairy, and egg industries
Hmm.
that push this nonsense out, from
Hmm.
celebrities that say these things on public platforms, and these ads and social media that has
Hmm.
confused people to the point where they're like, they don't even know what veganism is. They think it's like a diet and health trend.
Hmm. Hmm. Exactly. Yeah, I mean, that is the problem, I guess, everywhere, even in India. Last year, I got an opportunity to speak with media during Animal Liberation March in one of the cities. And I categorically told the media that it's high time that media becomes more responsible in covering veganism in right light. As of now, you all are only looking at some celebrities who are not even vegan, by the way. They are plant based. Sometimes are investors in some of these mock meat brands, etc. And you portray that as veganism, which has absolutely zero relationship with veganism, because in India, it also uh, there's this also elitism around veganism, that it's some sort of Western concept. So already that narrative is there. That is like Shivam is brainwashed by Jamie. He doesn't know. Yeah, that's. I'm just saying that's the narrative that some.
It didn't
Fa-
originate in the West. It
yeah,
originated in the East.
yeah. So some fancy white person in the West is talking about this, and someone like us who are just moved by this elitist message, and we are trying to.
Unbelievable.
Yeah. So you get the point, right? That the message is so damn distorted because
Right.
of the disproportionate amount of focus which is given to these celebrities. And that's why you are saying that it's like, we like it or not, it creates a huge impact. And from whatever I've seen so far, the impact is mostly negative. Like, if we do away with the Joaquin Phoenix speech at the Oscar, I would say that it's so damn negative, because every now and then celebrities will come and like this particular case where, like you rightly said, that he was talking about ethics and suddenly he's not. So then it confuses people so much, and it dilutes the message of animal rights, and I think that is very dangerous.
Very dangerous. Absolutely. So yeah, it's a huge problem. But on the flip side of things, we can use celebrities to our advantage. And I
Hmm?
think that PETA does a really good job at that, where they will have celebrities that might not even be vegan yet
Hmm.
campaign against animal testing or
Hmm.
campaign against fur and
Hmm.
outside issues that we can be strategic with our approach.
Hmm.
You know, like the world unfortunately is not going to go vegan overnight, and so if we can like
Hmm.
end the fur industry and
Hmm.
end animal testing and end leather, the
Hmm.
meat industry, the beef industry is going to collapse once the leather
Hmm.
industry collapses. So
Hmm.
they're intertwined, and it's about shifting people's mindsets
Hmm.
is what it is. And that's what's hard. Is it's like you look at the tobacco industry, right, back in the early 1900s, how everybody smoked, and it was just cultural,
Yeah.
and people actually thought it was like good for you. And now
Hmm.
we completely have shifted people's mindset on it, where most people are like, yeah, it's kind of a negative thing. We
Hmm.
need to do that with meat.
Hmm. Exactly. And I also feel that it's an action on Jamie, it's an action on Shivam, it's an action on so many of us, that we should grow as activists in terms of our social media status, right? So that we are not relying on celebrities as much, right? And so we need to have like really big, like hundreds of earthling ads, or probably even bigger than those accounts someday, hopefully
Mm-hmm.
sooner than later, right? And that's, I think that's relates to what you were saying earlier as well, that you want the attention because you want people to talk
Yeah.
about these issues, right? So yeah.
I mean, isn't that obvious? Like, what a stupid comment somebody would make. Like, you're just doing this for attention. Yeah, obviously, I'm doing this for attention,
Yeah.
dumbass. Like, what? What kind of comment is that?
Yeah.
I don't just do it so I can look at myself. You know?
and 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 you also mentioned the point that you're doing this for the money, and sometimes I also get that, hey, you are jobless and you're doing all of this for money, and I'm like,
Yes.
I'm like, dude, I have a master's degree and I have like 12 years of corporate experience, and I've quit all of that. I was doing really well, financially
Yeah.
speaking. I've quit all of that. I'm doing activism. I'm working with an NGO. Like, if I wanted to do this for the money, there's the last thing that I would do, right? So yeah,
Right.
there's no
Oh my
money.
God.
There is
There's no money in the animal rights movement, honestly. And if you have money, please donate it to us. Like,
yeah.
I couldn't thank you enough,
Yeah.
because I'm like, girls gotta eat. Yeah, that's it. Like the most insane comment. And you know, I think you sometimes see jealousy, like people might be jealous of you or whatever. And
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah,
I
of
don't know
course.
why, but God.
Of course. On that note, because you talked about jealousy, and this is a very personal and probably a vulnerable question. You can choose not to answer that. But have you faced
Okay.
criticism or negative comments from vegans as well?
Yeah, all the time. Like people will say, "Oh, you're promoting utilitarian approach and you don't
Hmm.
even know the definition of vegan." And I'm like, "You are literally looking at a 60-second clip that was cut from a 30-minute conversation.
Hmm.
Like, how dare you?" And you know what I just tell people at this point? I'm like, "You know what? If you think you could do it better, by all means, go for it." It's
Hmm.
super easy to sit from your computer and act like a little keyboard warrior and criticize the crap out of me. But when you actually are out on the street doing these things, you
Hmm.
might find that, wow, okay, there's a lot of different factors at play here. Like,
Hmm.
trust me, I am
Hmm.
trying my best. So I always tell people, like, look, you clearly know a lot more than I do. So please do it better. The animals would thank you,
Hmm.
And look, again, I'm a human. Like, I mess up. I'm not always like perfect, right?
Hmm.
So,
Hmm.
but I'm like, I think doing nothing for the animals is no good at all. And to
Hmm.
sit there and criticize other people, that is just so insane. I have sometimes people comment on my looks and say, "Oh, you get Botox, this and that." I'm like, I do not get Botox. Botox is not vegan.
Yeah.
Get out of here. Okay? Like, I do like facials.
That's like a
Sure. Okay?
that's like a compliment though. It's like telling a guy who lifts and who's natural and saying that, hey, you're on steroids. So that's
Right. Exactly. But also, like, I am 26 years old. Like,
Hmm.
I don't really have a lot of wrinkles yet. And I probably will one day. So what?
Yeah.
I don't
Yeah.
know. I like getting highlights, but I go to a cruelty free vegan
Yeah.
hairdresser. I mean, so there are ways to do it. And there's also like a lot people don't realize there are vegan cosmetic procedures that you can do. There
Hmm.
are a lot of vegan skincare products, there are vegan makeup products. So you could look into that. Like, just because somebody looks good doesn't mean
Hmm.
that they're like getting
Hmm.
things that are
Hmm.
not vegan. I mean, again, we live in a non-vegan world, and to be
Hmm.
held to standards where, like, oh my God, you got in a car that had leather seats, or you
Hmm.
took a plane. It's like, well,
Hmm.
I took a plane to go do activism somewhere. Like,
Hmm.
what am I supposed to do? I not take that plane or look into every seat? It's like, no. The
Hmm.
definition of vegan means to avoid animals and their secretions and any industries that exploit them to as far as is practically possible.
Hmm. Hmm.
That's the definition. And
Yeah.
so if it's
I'm
not practically possible, then
I'm sure
what
that
am I supposed to do?
yeah, I'm sure that you will get some hate and criticism on that definition itself, that hey, you don't know the actual definition.
Oh my God. I know,
but
exactly.
but
But
I
then again, they don't do anything. And by criticizing each other, it's like publicly doing that is just so wrong. It's like, message me and let's have a conversation. If you think I could be more effective, I'm always open to constructive feedback. But to be mean about it and to like post clips of me online and like bash me is just not productive for anybody, and it's not helping the animals. And these intersectional people, it's getting out of hand.
hmm, yeah,
It's like, I am
we
an animal rights activist, and I never
hmm,
claim to be an expert on human rights issues. And if I
hmm,
speak about every single issue on the planet,
hmm,
nobody's going to listen to anything that I say because
yeah,
there's so many problems. And I just want peace for everybody. I don't want anybody
hmm,
getting hurt, you
hmm,
know?
hmm. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I totally relate to that. And of course, the whole discussion around intersectionality, that is,
Ugh.
there are so many nuances to it. Like, I do see value in that, but that being said, it can't be a discussion over a 60-second clip or something. There are so many nuances and layers to it, right? And probably a topic for another day. But yeah, uh, when vegans bash you, I think it takes a toll on you. And one framework which now I tell myself, that if someone says something, I say, yeah, maybe I'm wrong, and why don't you do the right thing? And if I
Yeah.
see that as impactful, I'm humble enough to switch and work the way you do, right? So because there's always this in thing, right? Because people say, hey, you're doing street activism, you're talking to individuals, what change is that going to make? We should focus on policy level changes, you should do this, that. I mean, there are skill sets associated with what you do, and of course every person has their own individual perspective. And I one day I think I'll do a policy level, I'll work on policy level changes as
Yeah.
well, once I've gained enough knowledge and the skill set to work there. But meanwhile,
Yes.
if you think that is valuable, please do that. I'll root for you, and I'll learn from you, and probably
Yeah.
inculcate that in my activism as well. I so totally relate to that. And yes, of course there is space for criticism. I think uh, we
Yeah.
all should be open to learning, that if we are doing something wrong or if we are saying something wrong, we should always be open to learning, and that is definitely helpful. But yeah, uh, there is a brotherhood or a
Yeah.
sisterhood around how you criticize and how you take the movement forward as a whole, right?
Yeah, it makes us look like maniacs too when people like vegans come at me in the comment section, and I'm like, a non-vegan is gonna look at this and just be like, wow,
Hmm.
this, I don't want to be a part of this drama and this
Yeah.
community. And so there's ways to do it, and I think like I'm definitely open-minded to learning, and I
Hmm.
think throughout the years I have grown, and my approach 5 years ago is different than it is now, and
Hmm.
we're all trying our best, and I think we have to really stick together.
Yes, yes. And sometimes what people don't realize, that being in front of camera is not very easy and natural for a lot of
I
people.
know.
At least for me, it doesn't come naturally. And sometimes, even though you know the right things, but sometimes you'll say it in a manner which didn't come across right, and then that, okay, this is part of job. Next video I'll do better, but I can't wait for that one perfect message, right? And the perfect video to
Yes.
publish, right? So you learn as you proceed. So
A
yeah.
60-second clip can sometimes take me an hour to
Hmm.
edit.
Hmm.
People don't realize how hard video content creation can be.
Hmm.
I mean, you do have to have a level of understanding of camera equipment, editing,
Hmm.
music. Like it does sometimes take a while, especially
Hmm.
the styles that I do. Like if
Hmm.
I'm out on the street filming for like 4 hours, I have to go through all that footage and
Hmm.
cut it up into like a video. It sometimes takes me weeks to do.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
so like it's a lot easier. I think it's harder than it looks. And
It
it comes
is.
across as
Totally.
like easy, but
Totally.
it's not. Yeah.
Yeah. Totally harder than it looks. This is what I tell people. And one thing, people, whoever is listening to this, I'm sure that Jamie would agree to this, that if you record yourself and you watch your footages, you will get true feedback when you look at those footages, and that will help you improve. This is something I tell people. Hey, just like in the activism sessions which I take, I tell people, hey, start recording your conversations. Even simple answers to simple queries like plants feel pain, just try recording yourself for 2 minutes and see what you are saying. There's a very high chance that you might not even want to see beyond 30 seconds of what you are saying. Like, this is how I talk. Okay, why will the other person even listen to me? Because it's not engaging, the conversation is not coming in the right flow. So it gives you such a big feedback.
Totally. I think that it's so great. And it on that note, it's not always so easy watching yourself back. It's like uncomfortable, and you're a
Yeah.
lot more picky, I think, about yourself than other people are.
Hmm.
So yeah, it's you get used to it, but it's I think that there's a lot of things to be said about content creation, but I think that it is so effective for the animals and reaching people, and that's why I
Hmm.
do it. I honestly
Hmm.
don't think I would have social media if it weren't for the animal rights stuff.
Hmm.
It's so draining and time consuming sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a lot to be said, but if you have to quickly give like two pieces of advice for all the content creators who are watching this and are inspired by you.
Two pieces of advice. Um, One piece of advice is stay relevant and look at what trends are going on and come up with a way that is natural to you and your personality. So
Hmm.
like for me, as you kind of said at the beginning, like I do a lot of different sorts of videos and things, but I really like talking to people on the street. Like I
Hmm.
think that that's where I'm most effective. I like debating. I like having engaging, thought-provoking conversations. I think that's where I excel, and I recognize that. Some people are great dancers. So like taking that skill and applying it towards TikTok dance videos where you insert the animal rights vegan message in there. We are in a war, and we need everybody hands on deck doing something. And so my second piece of advice is just to press that record button and do something, and stop coming up with excuses as to, oh, well, my camera's not good enough, or, oh, I don't know how to edit. You learn and you figure it out as you go. My videos from when I first started, I've taken most of them down because I'm like, oh, this is embarrassing, and so you learn. But if I hadn't started somewhere, I wouldn't have been able to grow. And I'm still
Yeah.
growing and still figuring out ways to improve and reach more people. This is just the beginning, I feel. I might go from a couple thousand hits now, but like we're going to be hitting millions of people, and just staying consistent is the way to do that, I think.
Yeah, that's a great piece of advice. To first, being very authentic is so important, because that inadvertently
Yeah.
connects to being staying consistent. You can't be consistent if you're not authentic. We talked about your best activism moment. Is there a worst activism moment that you would like to share? Like you thought, oh, what did I do?
Oh,
Why did I do this? If I could only
uh,
reverse time.
ooh, the worst activism moment. A few come to mind. I'll tell you like a kind of funny one
Yeah,
first.
the funny
So
ones are the best. Yeah.
when you're going into like certain farms late at night, there's fences and you have to climb the fence. And I'm athletic, but I'm not like a professional fence climber, And so I was
Is
hopping
there
over a fence one time,
is
and it hooked on my pants,
no? I'm saying,
and I like was hanging like I had a wedgie from this fence, and I
okay.
was just like, oh my god, like the farmer's gonna catch me, and I'm like hanging on this fence like with a wedgie. Like I can't hop a damn fence, to try to get in there. So that's definitely like not my best moment.
Is there
uh,
something like a professional fence climber?
I don't know. There's people that are like parkour that can like
Yeah,
jump
yeah.
over shit, and like, but I am not like that. Like
Okay.
I climb delicately over, but clearly I could use some work in that category.
Did you
Um,
get caught that day?
No, no, no. That was just we were filming inside of
Okay.
this factory farm. Yeah. And another thing that comes to mind, I mean, I have so many things that haunt me to this day of the animals that I've had to leave behind, I think. And I would attribute that to like the I don't know if I would say worst part of activism or like the hardest part of activism, but sometimes you go inside these places and you can only take so many animals out, and
Hmm.
you have to leave behind
Hmm.
all these lives, and
Hmm.
knowing what's going to happen to them.
Hmm.
And I remember one year of Kaporos, which is a religious slaughter ritual and that happens around the world in September. I was at this event, and they were just slaughtering chickens like right on the street right in front of us.
Hmm.
And this one chicken had her throat slit, and she was thrown inside of a cone, but she
Hmm.
managed to like get out of the
Hmm.
cone, and
Hmm.
she flew on this car that was nearby, and I was standing right there and I was filming it.
Hmm.
And I still to this day don't know if I would have dropped the camera and just grabbed her and run, if she would be alive today. I mean, it's hard to know because her throat was slit and like it was so chaotic. But I
Hmm.
kept filming, but I said, you can hear me in the video saying, come here, come here, come here. And she flew to me. And because I had the camera in my hand, I couldn't hold her. And so she
Hmm.
was then on the ground, and the guy grabbed her by the foot and then threw her back in the cone.
Hmm.
And so that like haunts me,
Hmm.
to this day,
Hmm.
is like she somehow sensed that like I could help her or
Hmm.
save her or something. And
Hmm.
she flew to me like out of this cone that she was upside
Hmm.
down in. And
Hmm.
yeah, things like that come to mind. And
Thank you so
and
much, Jamie. Yeah, thank you
yeah.
so much, Jamie, for sharing such a vulnerable moment. And I can only imagine how painful it would have been to focus on your work or to help that individual animal. And I'm sure, like you said, it still haunts you. So thank you so much
Oh,
for
every
sharing that.
day.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, then if, other things come to mind, like I've had some conversations where I wasn't always proud of. Like I was talking to this one hunter. It was
Hmm.
like on a July 4th weekend and everybody was drinking and I might have had a few too many beers. And instead of me engaging in a thought provoking conversation like I normally would, I ended up just resorting to telling him that he was compensating for something else and that he had a small penis. And
Hmm. Hmm.
so I got really angry with this hunter guy. And I don't
Hmm.
know. Sometimes things happen like that, but at
Hmm.
least he knows that I think he has a small penis, and that's why he hunts.
But who knows? Maybe he started following you on social media and is probably contemplating going vegan. Who knows?
I don't know. I don't know. I learn from every conversation I have, but
If you come to
yeah,
know,
he
if you
was.
if ever that happens and you come to know that he has gone vegan, then probably retract your statement and apologize to him and say thank you for going vegan.
Yeah, your penis is a lot bigger than I thought. Um,
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah.
So resorting to insults usually doesn't work. I've learned that,
Absolutely.
but
Yeah.
yeah.
Exactly. And since you shared your earlier experience about that hen, and I feel like I can just imagine. I haven't seen that video, but I can just imagine the whole scene, you there with the camera and the bird, poor
I
bird,
can send it to you.
in that helpless
Yeah.
situation. So I'm imagining that, and I feel so strongly with the conflict that you had in your mind. So I'll just share one very recent moment with you. And it happened with me and my partner. We were at a wet market and we were filming the whole thing. And because there were people around and we did not, it was in broad daylight, right? So people, they are selling animal flesh and you'll see real animals and all of that. And just to blend in, we were smiling and having conversations with those
Yeah.
people, right? And in between, like, my partner, she walked out and even I went out. We came out of that of that facility for a moment. And she, and we were almost in tears, and she was like, I feel like such a hypocrite right now that I'm seeing all of that right in front of me, and yet I'm able to put on a smile on my face and talk to them like everything is normal. And
Right.
really hard and really conflicting, right? Because you want to probably just want time to freeze at that moment and run away with all those animals, but at the same time you know that you are here because you want to document and share this with the world so that more people can see and change. So I mean that is very hard and very difficult aspect, especially when you go to these places and you do participate in vigils, right? It's very hard and
Yes.
conflicting. So I can so relate with that. And once again, thank you so much for sharing such a vulnerable experience.
Of course. I mean, there's so many of them,
Hmm,
unfortunately.
hmm,
So,
hmm,
I try to focus on the victories and be
hmm,
strategic of, well, we've protested a number of fur stores and in New York and have gotten them to go fur free and like things like
hmm,
that. Okay, I can see the measurable impact and see the
hmm.
victory. But when it
Yeah.
comes to the animals used for food, unfortunately, the numbers are only going up, and that's what really motivates me to continue
Hmm.
doing more and not stop.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah. I had one more question, and that is with regard to disruptive activism. I saw one of your videos earlier, and I could not find it to present right now, but of course, you would know, where you went inside a superfood store and you took a trolley full of coconuts and then you overturned that, right? So,
yeah,
first, in general, what do you think? Of course, I will not ask you what do you think of disruptive activism because we know by your actions. I would rather ask you, why do you think disruptive activism is impactful? That's one. And in that incident as well, if I'm not wrong, you were like the cops arrested you, or probably you were taken by the security folks there. So, wanted to understand how do you how do you manage or how do you cope with that? Because if you know that if you get arrested or if you get a legal uh, if there's a legal action against you, then that sets you back, right? That drains so much of time, energy, probably money, so all of that, right? So what's your thought on this?
Mhm. So the first part is, why do I think disruptive activism is necessary? And I believe that sometimes it's the only actions that get back to the higher ups and to
Hmm.
headquarters. So
Hmm.
for that specific action where we dumped coconuts all over the floor of Whole Foods,
Hmm.
this action was done by many activists in various cities at multiple Whole Foods locations.
Hmm.
And this happens often. And the reason is because we're talking about monkey slave labor that
Hmm.
is happening in Thailand. And so the
Hmm.
ask is that Whole Foods drops all monkey slave related coconut products.
Hmm.
And again, it's the last resort. PETA has gone numerous times to the executives of Whole Foods and said, hey,
Hmm.
these are the brands that we know for sure is tied to monkey labor. Use
Hmm.
these alternatives instead and
Hmm.
drop this particular brand.
Hmm.
And they just don't respond. And so it's like, okay, well, you don't want to have a conversation about this. You don't want to respond. You don't want to change. Well, then we're going to make your life a little bit more difficult. So
Hmm.
it makes their life tough and difficult because it's a nuisance. And social change doesn't happen from everybody just smiling at each other and hugging. It
Hmm.
happens because people get uncomfortable and sometimes they have no
Hmm.
other choice but to change. When you look at
Hmm.
the civil rights movement, you had thousands of people marching on Washington
Hmm.
to advocate for equality and peace. And
Hmm.
you think about how many police officers that takes. It gets back to the higher ups, to the government.
Hmm.
um it's something that creates a little bit of a chaotic scene and a nuisance, and that needs to
Hmm.
be taken care of and dealt with. And so if we can make it so that industries that abuse animals have to spend resources, time, and money to deal with activists, and that make cause a scene in their stores and make it so that like they're uncomfortable. I
Hmm.
think that it sometimes pushes them to change quicker.
Hmm. Interesting, but I have two counter questions on that.
Yeah.
One is when you go to these stores and throw away their products, uh, an argument can be made that hey, you are still adding to the demand because they will
Oh,
replace
they
it with.
weren't their product. We brought our own coconuts.
Oh, okay, that's cool. And
Yeah.
okay, and where did you source that from?
The PETA got it, and it
Okay,
was from a market that was nearby a hotel that they were staying at,
okay,
and they were able to track
good.
wherever that came from. And we know that it wasn't from the monkey coconut labor because the coconuts themselves are actually not what we were talking about. It's
Hmm.
the product of the milk. It's a
Hmm.
certain brand
Hmm.
that they were able to track that definitely uses the monkey slave labor.
Hmm.
And then your second part of the question, which is, okay, well, what about the legal consequences of it?
Hmm.
So, my advice to people is to work with bigger organizations like PETA, like Mercy for Animals,
Hmm.
um, you know, Gen V, Vegan FTA, that if you guys are doing a disruptive action, you know that your legal fees will be
Hmm.
covered.
Hmm. Exactly,
So,
because
with,
yeah,
yeah,
because if from activism perspective, uh, Jamie's time, resource, energy, money is very valuable, right? And if you are doing a high risk action, then you need to be strategic about it and de-risk yourself if such an unfortunate event materializes, right?
right. Exactly. So, with that being said, like I wasn't really worried about the legal situation. And again, it wasn't a high risk action. Like there's some actions where I go into things where I'm like, there is a 99% chance I will definitely be arrested,
Okay.
and then you have this understanding of like, okay, you have to write your lawyer's number on your arm. You have to have an ID with you, and this will
Hmm.
help processing become faster when you're
Hmm.
in jail. But like for that, PETA had been doing this also for I think over a year, many years. This has been
Hmm.
going on.
Hmm.
So they've only had one time where activists were arrested, and it was simply because the activists refused to leave
Hmm.
the store, and they kind of locked down a Whole Foods. So I really wasn't worried. Like,
Hmm.
to be honest with you, like the cops, they don't really want to arrest you. I mean, I dumped 300 coconuts on the floor. Yeah, it caused a mess, but like, we're here speaking up for the animals, and like, they would prefer not to. But if you simply refuse to leave, then they can charge you with that.
Hmm.
There's always a risk of arrest. I mean, but that, with an action like that with PETA, I'm not worried about the legal stuff.
Hmm. Yeah. And that is such an important piece of advice, that not to do it on your own, because then if you're doing it as an independent activist, then it can get really messy for you, because you don't have the infrastructure to deal with this kind of shit, right? Especially in India, I know that I guess probably everywhere judicial system is problematic. In India, um, as far as my experience and opinion goes, it is very complicated and complex, and if you get there, then it drains so much out of you. And like I said earlier, that as an activist, our energy and time is very valuable, so we have to ensure that it's utilized in the best possible way for the animals, right? Nice.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Yeah, so I think that's it, Jamie. All the questions that I had in my mind for you today. Thank you so much for your time. And is there not one, there are two, like, would you like to give two messages, one for the non-vegans and then one for the vegans?
Sure. I mean, to the non-vegans, I want them to know that I was there. I was in
Yeah.
that place, and that my biggest regret is that I didn't go vegan sooner,
Hmm.
and that every single day that they wait to make the shift and the change, there are so many animals suffering because of them,
Hmm.
literally because of you.
Hmm.
So, take the action sooner the better. And I really wish that I had taken it sooner. So I would encourage them to truly educate themselves about what's happening in these industries and ask, what side of history do you want to be on?
Hmm.
A side that contributes to a system that hurts animals and the environment and people's health, or a system that is the solution to many
Hmm.
of these issues.
Hmm.
And to vegans alike, I would just say the animals don't have time. So stop with the excuses and get active now.
Hmm. Exactly. And it doesn't matter how you get active, just get active, right? Yeah,
Yes.
and like,
Connect with other like minded people.
yeah, and like Jamie earlier said, even a small gesture like wearing a t-shirt to a public place with an animal rights message can also be impactful, right? And of course, try to push your limits. And this is what I tell people, like, uh, no amount of discomfort that we get from activism will can ever be compared to what these animals go through. So think from the victim's perspective.
Exactly. Think it from the victim's perspective. And I think that it's important for us as activists to educate ourselves, and so that we can eloquently share these issues with people and be able to respond to the questions that people have
Hmm.
when you tell them that they're vegan, and
Hmm.
to truly be educated about it.
Yep, yep. Yeah, that's another very important advice, to become better activists, and to learn more about the issues and how to articulate your responses when such a situation arises and when you get these queries. So yeah,
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for having me on,
yeah,
and thank you to everybody that listened and that made it this far. I appreciate you all, and we're in it together.
yeah. Thank you so much, Jamie, and once again, really appreciate and admire your work. It inspires us a lot, and please continue to do what you do. We'll always cheer for you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And guys, if you want to connect or have any questions after listening, just reach out to me on Instagram. It's Jamie's Corner.
Yeah,
And if sometimes it goes into my hidden folder, so I don't always see them. So it's Jamie Logan is my other account, which I can
yeah,
sometimes see messages better there.
yeah.
But I appreciate you all, and thank you, Shivam. And
Yeah.
this was such a great conversation.